This is a moment that calls for deep reflection, not just as Nigerians, but as Africans watching history unfold before our very eyes. We often talk about the heroes of the past, the giants like Nelson Mandela who stood in the gap for their people. But today, we are being forced to look at a modern-day struggle through the eyes of a woman who is watching her husband walk a path that she claims is even more dangerous than the one walked by the Madiba himself. The headline that has taken over the social media space today involves a heartbreaking and powerful cry from Uchechi Kanu, the wife of Nnamdi Kanu. She has come out to declare that her husband is fighting darker forces than Nelson Mandela ever fought in South Africa. This statement is not just a comparison, it is an indictment of the system we are operating in. Uchechi Kanu is telling the world that while Mandela fought an apartheid regime that was brutal, it was still a regime that, in her words, was amenable to reasoning. She is suggesting that the forces arrayed against the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, today lack that basic capacity for reason, making his battle infinitely harder and darker. We are broadcasting this special report to you today to unpack the weight of these words, coming just weeks after Nnamdi Kanu was handed a life sentence by Justice James Omotosho and shipped off to the Sokoto Custodian Center, far away from his kin and his counsel. Let's start with the Mandela comparison, because this is what has everyone talking. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. He was labeled a terrorist by the United States and the apartheid government. Yet, Uchechi argues that Mandela had an arena where he could fight, a legal and political space where, despite the oppression, there was a structure that could eventually be engaged. She is juxtaposing that with the situation of her husband in December 2025. She said, Nelson Mandela fought in the arena, apartheid, with those amenable to reasoning, despite its brutality. Nnamdi Kanu, however, fights in the arena against forces far more darker. What are these darker forces? She is likely referring to the opacity of the judicial process we have witnessed, the breaking of international laws regarding rendition, and now the calculated isolation of a man in a prison hundreds of kilometers away from his support base. It is a cry that suggests the rules of engagement in Nigeria have been thrown out the window. You have to look at the context of the last few weeks to understand her pain. On November 20, 2025, the hammer fell. Justice James Omotosho convicted Kanu on terrorism charges and sentenced him to life imprisonment. It wasn't the death penalty, which the judge noted was an option, but a life sentence in a maximum security facility is a kind of death in itself, a death of freedom, a death of connection. And then, just this past Monday, December 8th, the court twisted the knife further by refusing his request to be transferred back to Abuja or a closer facility like Kuje or Suleja. Imagine being a wife and knowing your husband is in Sokoto, a place that is historically and geographically removed from the heart of the agitation he leads. It is this feeling of total encirclement that likely prompted her statement. Uchechi was emphatic on X, formerly Twitter, about the label placed on her husband. She wrote, Nnamdi Kanu is not a terrorist. He is the greatest African freedom fighter that exists and the leader of millions of Biafrans scattered all over the world. This is a direct challenge to the Nigerian state's narrative. The government says terrorist, the wife says freedom fighter. History is often written by the victors, but Uchechi is refusing to let the government write this story alone. She is reminding the world that millions of people still look up to him. She admitted something rare for a political spouse. She admitted he is not perfect, because no human is. This humanizes him. It strips away the myth and shows the man. But she followed it up with the ultimate defense. He loves his people and his people love him. In her eyes, that love is what makes him a target for these darker forces. We also need to talk about the psychological warfare that is happening right now. In the last few days, we have seen AI-generated images circulating online showing Kanu in a blue prison uniform looking dejected in a cage. These fake images are designed to break the spirit of his followers. They are part of the darkness Uchechi is talking about, a system that uses misinformation to humiliate a leader. But despite this, we saw a glimmer of hope on December 1 when Abia State Governor Alex Oti visited Kanu in Sokoto. Uchechi praised this visit, calling it a demonstration of solidarity that will endure. When a sitting governor visits a convicted terrorist in the eyes of the law, it sends a signal that the political solution is not dead. It validates her claim that he is a leader of people, not just a criminal. The phrase amenable to reasoning is the most stinging part of her critique. She's implying that the Nigerian state has closed its ears to dialogue. Mandela's release came because the apartheid government eventually realized they could not kill the idea by keeping the man in jail. They sat down, they negotiated. Uchechi is asking, where is the negotiation here? Why is the response only force, rendition, and life imprisonment? By sending him to Sokoto, the state seems to be saying, we are done talking. And that is a dangerous place to be. When you shut the door on reasoning, you open the door to the darker forces of endless conflict and resentment. The reality of the Sokoto Custodial Center cannot be ignored. It is a fortress. Reports from the facility indicate heavy military presence with truckloads of soldiers guarding the perimeter. This is what she means by fighting in a different arena. It is not just a legal battle anymore. It is a physical and mental siege. The distance makes it almost impossible for his legal team to have the frequent, confidential access needed to mount an appeal. And remember, the appeal is already facing hurdles, with the court adjourning the transfer case until January 27, 2026. That is weeks of isolation, weeks where Uchechi cannot see her husband, weeks where he is alone with these forces. I want to pause here and ask you to really think about the weight of history. Whether you agree with IPOB or you disagree, whether you like Nnamdi Kanu or you hate him, the treatment of political prisoners defines a nation's soul. If we accept that a man can be rendited without due process and then locked away for life without a chance for political dialogue, what precedent are we setting? Uchechi's prayer is a warning. She is saying that if they can do this to a man who commands the loyalty of millions, what can they do to the common man? The love she speaks of, many are willing to protect him with their last breath, is evident in the reaction from the southeast. Despite the life sentence, the solidarity has not cracked. If anything, the harshness of the judgment has hardened the resolve of his supporters. They see him now not just as a leader but as a martyr suffering for their sake. This is the Nelson Mandela effect she's alluding to. The more you punish him, the bigger the symbol becomes. The government might have the body in Sokoto, but they do not have the mind of the movement. As we look towards 2026, the legal battle will continue, but the moral battle is being fought in the court of public opinion. Uchechi Kanu has fired a salvo that challenges the conscience of the world. She is calling on the international community to look past the terrorist label and see the freedom fighter. She is asking us to compare the records. Mandela was vilified until he was canonized. Will history repeat itself with Kanu, or will the darker forces prevail? This is a story of resilience, of love, and of a woman refusing to let her husband be forgotten in a cell 700 kilometers away. It is a story that affects every single one of us because it asks us what kind of justice we want for our country. Is it justice based on vengeance or justice based on reasoning? I want to hear from you, family. Do you agree with Uchechi Kanu? Is Nnamdi Kanu fighting forces darker than apartheid? And do you think the government should be amenable to reasoning and seek a political solution like they did in South Africa? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This is a heavy topic, but we must discuss it. And please, if you value this kind of deep, unfiltered analysis of the stories that matter, hit that like button right now. It helps us get the truth out there. If you're not subscribed, join the movement today. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you are the first to know when the next update on Nnamdi Kanu drops. We'll be tracking the appeal, the prison conditions, and the response from the presidency. Stay tuned.